All right, so then we pick up, and little Nueng is not blind. And she notices that there's something odd going on between Big Nueng and Chet, because you don't have history of, your fiance running out on you on your wedding day and be able to hide it fully. That's just not possible, especially with them. So little Nueng tries to figure out if Big Nueng is into him, because of course she is jealous. And because no one is even allowed to look at Big Nueng.
Never.
Which little Nueng, that's all people are going to do because Big Nueng.
Well, the thing that's weird, the thing that's weird from her point of view is that Big Nueng's like, I don't know this man. And then she takes his business card. So I think that she's trying to call her out and be like, well, if you weren't interested, why would you take the business card? And then Big Nueng's like, why are you pushing this? And little Nueng's like, because I like you. And then Big Nueng gets embarrassed, which like happens over and over again. Because, okay, first of all, she's like, what are you doing, child? Basically. But really, it's mostly because I think Big Nueng, again, grew up in that repressive household. She wears that mask of indifference constantly as a form of protection. And little Nueng is constantly professing how she feels, like in public. They're on a busy street. She's just being like, I love you, in the middle of a crowd, because she has no shame. And Big Nueng's like, what the fuck? You're supposed to do, if you mean this, you're supposed to do it in private and like say it only for me to hear. That makes it special. That's part of her like her deal. But little Nueng's like, fuck it. No, I want the world to know. And in this conversation, it's interesting because we get into the crux of like why little Nueng's like that. Because Big Nueng's like, why do you keep doing this? Aren't you embarrassed? And little Nueng's like, you are the only person I don't feel embarrassed to be around. Like which is confirmation again, like we said, that little Nueng sees Big Nueng as her safe space. And it's somebody she feels comfortable with enough to be her true self around. And again, I think that's something that Big Nueng wants as well. And that's part of the appeal of little Nueng for her. And after little Nueng just, again, proclaims her love very publicly, Big Nueng also says, like, it's so easy for you to say. Like, well, it's like the fact that these emotions just come out of your mouth so easily is just wild to her because, again, this is the childhood trauma bullshit where she is emotionally stunted. I think that, and this is something I wanted to bring up and really hark on, because the difference between the two of them is that, like, little Nueng, you see her behave like a child, like physically and like how she talks and that kind of stuff. But like, let us not forget that Big Nueng is like emotionally a child, because I think she's so stunted by like the repression, all the things Kaitlynn went over. So I think that in somebody of her age, she's actually less in tune with her emotions than she should be. So perhaps I think she struggles with expressing her feelings. And part of her, and because of that, she struggles with that. It makes her envious of little Nueng's ability to just be very blunt with her emotions. But the other thing is, like, again, I think she suffers from some self-loathing, and she probably, on some level, doesn't want to believe what little Nueng says is true when she's like being like, oh, I honest, this is how I feel. Well, Big Nueng's like, okay, sure, whatever. I don't believe you.
I mean, because she can never believe anyone in her life, so.
Because people always have ulterior motives around her. So, like, it's not surprising.
And since the I love you thing happened, Big Nueng is now showing more affection to little Nueng. And she holds her wrist across the street after telling her to go home. Now, usually she'd just let her follow her. But no, this time she was like, I'm taking you. We're going together.
Yeah, and I remember the first time we watched this, we're like, why is she doing this? It's very much like an adult leading a child across the street, which it does look like that on the surface. And maybe that's what's going on. But I think what it's really supposed to demonstrate also is that while Big Nueng talks a big game about being indifferent to little Nueng's feelings, she cares enough about her to like grab her hand and make sure she safely gets across the street. Because let us all recall the thing she discovered as a child, which is act the opposite of the way you feel. So she's doing that right here. But I think that the difference is that like little Nueng wears her down so much that eventually her true feelings start emerging. It's like this idiom keeps coming up in these novels, which is like a dripping water eventually will wear down a stone. That's literally what's happening with the two of them. Like little Nueng just wears down the walls until feelings come out of Big Nueng, and it's just, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And instead of just sending her home, she takes her there. Like, she's like, I'm going to make sure you're fully okay. And we're going to go to your home.
And I'm glad she does it because it's like dark by the time they get there.
Yeah. Like, hold on, what is time, though? Because we never get to see the sun going down. It's just always day and then night.
How far away does Little Nog live from this bus stop is my question. Because, yeah, they always leave and it's daylight and they get home and it's dark. Like, damn, that's a commute.
Seriously. Yeah, so Little Nueng has stated multiple times now that Big Nueng makes her feel safe and powerful, which is so important for someone like Little Nueng who doesn't have that in her life. And Big Nueng kicks the puppy and tells Little Nueng that she doesn't like her being clingy. And it's the first time Little Nueng seems to actually listen and looks hurt by Big Nueng's words. And Little Nueng admits to her that she doesn't know how to act. Like, this is her emotionally and socially stunted as well. Because she doesn't have these experiences. She was isolated, not by her own choice growing up. So she doesn't know, like, the proper ways to be with somebody else.
Yeah, all she knows is the dynamic of I'm a child to my grandmother. That's all she knows. Which is really hard. It's really heartbreaking. And I also want to bring up that in this conversation, when Big Nueng is kind of trying to get her to like not cling to her, she doesn't like people in her personal space, which is fine. But in part of the argument, she says, is there no one at home for you to hug? Like, that's what gets her, that's what freezes Little Nueng. And I want to bring this up because this comes up later, and Big Nueng remembers this moment. She files this shit away, and it comes back up later, and I'll bring it up when it comes up again. But Little Nueng in this conversation explains why she doesn't know how to behave because, again, she lives with her grandmother and she feels because of their age gap, she doesn't have a lot in common with her. She's not treated like a human being with her grandmother. It's very much the grandmother views Little Nueng as you're an extension of me, not you're an independent human. So you're going to do what I say. So she's like, I don't know how to talk to people in a real way. I just know how to be viewed as a child. Right. And also, like, there is 100% a no hug policy in that house. Let's be honest. So, like, no, there is nobody to hug her. Right. So she's not getting. She's touch starved. Both of them are touch starved human beings. Never forget that. And like Kaitlynn, like you were saying, like Little Nueng's social skills are completely skewed. But despite that, she does manage to have real conversations with Big Nueng. So throughout the series. And once she explains because Big Nueng's like, why are you with your grandmother? Where are your parents? Once she explains that like her parents aren't in the picture, this is when it clicks for Nueng. Like, this is when Nueng gets real quiet because this strikes her own trauma chord because she's an orphan. She understands not having her parents around. And one thing I do love from this conversation is that after this, Little Nueng's like, well, I'm sad now that you brought this up, but you're asking me questions, trying to genuinely get to know me. Please keep asking me questions. Like, it's very sweet because nobody asks this girl questions, like real ones. They just, again, if you watch all the conversations that happen with Little Nueng, it's just people are trying to impose their will onto her. Nobody except Big Nueng asks, how do you feel about this? And so, like, this is probably one of the first times somebody took a genuine interest in her and was asking her questions. And she's like, finally, you're trying to get to know me. Like, please keep asking me questions, even though I'm sad. This topic is sad as fuck. Like, just keep asking me things. Like, it's heartbreaking and sweet and sad and just, ugh. It's a big moment, though. This is a big moment.
It's because no one wants her to have a voice.
Yeah.
She is still very much in the children should be seen and not heard thing. Because she'll treat it like a child.
Yeah. It's a hierarchy thing where it's like, you don't get to have the opinion. I have dominion over you. Because you'll see language later where they're like, I have the right to tell her where she's living. She's being controlled constantly. Like, she doesn't get to have a voice. But Big Nueng is the only person that gives her the space to, like, say her mind, peace of mind.
And this is when Big Nueng is realizing that they're more alike than she thought. And so when she starts inquiring things that she has trauma from, like, how would you feel if your grandmother fainted and you had run away and left her alone?
Okay, yes, projection, Your Honor. But here's one thing I want to note about this conversation, though, because I don't know that Nueng ever thought about that. Big Nueng, because, sorry, I don't know that Big Nueng ever thought about that, because when she left, the grandmam had Sam and Song. So, like, there were people living in the house that could take care of the grandmam. So Big Nueng could leave knowing that even though we're fighting, the grandmam will be taken care of by my sisters. Little Nueng does not have that luxury. She's alone with her grandmother, which makes her situation kind of worse because she doesn't have her sisters. She doesn't have sisters to confide in the way that Big Nueng did. She is truly alone in this whole clusterfuck of a situation.
Which is probably why she's the one that's socially stunted.
Agreed.
And Little Nueng is like, you don't know the situation, so it's easier for you to say that all these things, but Big Nueng does, in a way. And now Big Nueng looks like the kicked puppy, and her attachment to Little Nueng has just grown tenfold.
Yep.
And then Big Nueng stumbles onto the marks on Little Nueng's leg. And when she asks about it, Little Nueng lies and says she fell and then quickly runs off to get out of the situation so she doesn't have to. And it's interesting that she doesn't want Big Nueng to know.
Well, what's weird is that the dialogue before she sees the bruises is Big Nueng's like, "Oh, is your grandmother really that strict?" Because in her head she's like, I'm thinking. She tells out loud, she's like, "I'm thinking about somebody who's in a similar situation to you," and she's like, "How strict could your grandmother really be? I grew up with a fucking grandmam. There is nobody stricter than that bitch." And Little Nueng's like, "No, she's real strict. She hits me if I don't do well in school." Like she tells her, like my grandmother does corporal punishment regularly. And then Big Nueng's like, "Well, how strong could a frail old woman be?" Mm-hmm. Like, because we get a flashback of Big Nueng where it's happening to her basically. And I think in her mind, because she's so far out from this event, she's glossed over what that was actually like. And she was like, "Well, I was tough and I took it. Like, why can't you?" I think that's her mentality when she's having this conversation. But then when she sees the bruises, she's like, "Oh shit, like that woman is really hurting you. Like those bruises are really bad." And that's when Little Nueng's like, "No, I fell. I know what I was just saying, but this was me falling. This wasn't my grandmother." And that's when Big Nueng gets like immediately, once she recognizes that this girl she cares about is being harmed, her mask dissolves and you just see her looking just extremely worried about her. Like there's no pretense of indifference. She's like, "Oh shit, like I'm worried about her." But like worried about Little Nueng, or is she like worried about herself? Because I think part of her journey is like trying to heal her inner child that was never actually healed, and like save, quote, her inner child by saving, quote, Nueng, little Nueng from her own fate. So I think that's also part of the narrative.
Yeah. And then Big Nueng ends up getting nightmares about all the times that her grandmother hit her because trauma.
And it's trauma for the exact same reason. Because in the flashback, why is this happening? Big Nueng, who was Little Nueng at the time, didn't get like 100% on her test score. So the grandmam was like, "You have to be perfect. You're the heir." All this bullshit. And what's interesting about the flashback is that when the corporal punishment is happening, what does Nueng do? Nueng stands there with her head held high. She doesn't cry. She doesn't make a sound. She just takes it, and takes it like pridefully, you know. So I think that was what was like skewing her remembering this. She's like, "Well, I got through it and with my head held high," like, you know.
Yeah, but that's not everyone's coping mechanism, Big Nueng.
No. But I mean, she was raised to be perfect and blah, 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 and like all this shit. And that was, very much her attitude, you could tell during the scene.
Yeah. But then the next day, Little Nueng shows up to Big Nueng's place because now that she knows exactly where she lives. She finds that Big Nueng is in the elevator with Chet. Dun, dun, dun.
And it does look like they're in the middle of like fighting or having a lover's quarrel or some shit. So it is concerning that Chet knows where she lives, because Chet is the worst. Let's just get that out there now.
He is.
But yes. Dun, 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 indeed. And that's where it ends. So that wraps up this discussion. Before we sign off, we're going to start a new trend for this, which thanks Becky from Gap, because she loves Taylor Swift.
This is not a new trend at this point, Theora.
No, I mean, us putting it at the end of the episodes is new.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah,
it is new.
We're not doing it more.
Validation to me. Okay, so which Taylor Swift song related to this episode / yeah, what was going on here? I think personally we are obligated to bring up Blank Space because of I got a blank space, baby, and I'll write your name. That's basically the show. So there's that.
Well, some came up while we were doing this. So I Forgot That You Existed was Sam and Mon's relationship.
Literally, though.
This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things is whenever it comes on the screen. Well, you know, whenever any of Little Nun's family comes on the screen, it's This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things.
Literally, though. Oh my god, yeah. No, that's real good. All right. And then, last but not least, who would you or what would you give the Big Gay Energy Award? For those at home, let us know what from this episode encapsulated the concept of big gay energy the most in this episode. What do you think?
Big Nueng.
Big Nueng. Yeah, that's the answer.
But it's gonna be hard. That's gonna be my answer in every episode, though. So, like, I have to figure out something.
You have to be more specific. Okay. All right. Not just say Big Nueng. Okay. Big Nueng, specifically the Big Nueng, the first time we see her with Little Nueng, where she's in that brown button down and the half bun. Yes. That Big Nueng.
Like, so basically, it's like which
Big Nueng?
Big Nueng outfit is the gayest.
That had big gay energy, that outfit. That's why Little Nueng was like, okay, I'm going to go for her.
Oh my gosh. No, she looks so good. So good. Yes, so good.
Also, we have to give it to Little Nueng's just confidence to be like,
yeah,
I'm not going to wife you now, but one day I am. Like, that also is just radiating big gay energy.
I mean, the big lesbian energy. Can I move in with you?
Literally, trying to U-Haul. We're not even dating yet. That was insane. Gotta love that confidence. Okay, so Kaitlynn, tell the listeners at home that made it this far, what is their secret word?
Today's secret word that you're supposed to not look up how to spell and use in a comment or review, it's funnier if it's a review, is in honor of Little Nueng. And the word is mischievous.
That's a good one. Also for the loyal pin, that's probably airing right now.
Oh. Yeah.
Yes, mischievous. Yeah. I would love to see how you guys, just if you can fit it into some kind of a sentence, also that'd be great. But thank you guys for listening. We will be back next time to continue our discussion of Blank the Series, going on with season 1, episode 2. And until next time, as this show gets gayer and gayer, just keep hydrating for lesbian Jesus.
You're gonna need it. And gay it up all over the place. Bye.
And with that, we've been Big Gay Energy. If you like this episode, check out all our other episodes right here on YouTube.
Please like, leave a comment below, and subscribe for more amazing super gay content.